Hi all, I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. And in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to solder a sterling silver bail to a pendant. There's a lot of different ways that you can solder, but I guarantee you none are easier than mine.
All right, it's a whole new era. Okay, so look at this adorable little pendant we have here. We've got our bezel soldered on. So now we're going to put our bail on. We have just your third arm holding it, all lined up. And generally speaking, when you're trying to put things on, have as many things laying flat as physically possible. It just cuts down on a lot of the aggravation. So we're going to use medium solder. I'm going to cut a few pieces and ball it up, and we're going to kind of stick it right on the side. It's kind of the thing that we were talking about the other day about using the paste flux almost a little bit like glue. We'll put a little bit of paste flux there, we'll dry it a little bit, and then when I take my ball, stick it in a little bit of paste flux, you can kind of just make it stick. Doesn't always want to do that, of course, but I take advantage of that as much as possible. Because if you look at this, if I put the solder ball on top, what's going to happen? That little shit, you know it's going to want to like kind of keep rolling forward. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to have my tweezers, but there's certain things that it just does not want to do, or what it wants to do is very naughty. So I try to just circumvent that, because we're going to then put our solder right here on the side. I mean, I know I'll have to move that back, but you see what I mean? Right there on the side.
Okay. So not in the middle on the top.
Not, because that spot on the top, can we do it? Yes. But unless you're really careful, that little shit just is like...
Yep. Okay.
And the problem is, because you did that background in brass, you're going to really see that. You're going to have to get in there and clean it up, and that's going to suck a whole lot. You know how I feel about cleanup, right? Like, boo, clean up, bad. So I try to avoid it whenever I can. Probably only need 1 or 2 pieces, but I just like to have it. And I'll switch this down to a 0 or maybe even a double 0. This is pretty small what we're doing. But for the solder, doesn't matter. Whee! That's why I always do more solder than I need. Thank you. Put that back there. So let's see.
Those are all double.
0. Well, let's try a double 0 and see how we feel about it. Now another thing, because the pendant itself is brass, we used a fire coat on it. So we dipped it in our homemade fire coat and dried it off, and that'll just protect it, and that way you won't get that really like heavy copper finish on the outside that we'd have to solder off, that we'd have to file off, which we don't want to do. Okay, so I'm gonna put, wow, these tweezers are nice. Oh look, those are the Jewelry Arts tweezers. That's amazing. Okay, so I just put a little bit of flux there. I'm going to kind of dry it a little bit. And then let me model good habits and turn that off when I'm not looking at it.
Okay.
Now I dipped it in. Can you see that? A lot of times the people make a mistake with little tiny things like this. You cannot put like 6 drops of flux on there. You're never going to be able to see what's happening. That's why I like to use the paste flux. It's very concentrated, so I don't have to like this thing, and I can still see what's happening, but it'll still be enough flux to, you know, keep it clean and do what we need to do. You see that? Move that a little bit. See how it's sticking there? Now look, if it doesn't stick, it's not like, start over. You just pick it up and poke it where you need it to be. But I do try to kind of use that glue-ish method to kind of help me do what I need to do. But as I'm heating this, I'm gonna have my tweezers right there, because things move. That's why I always have tweezers.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna move this up to a 0 though.
That's a 0 that I just put out next to.
Oh, it is. Thank you. Generally speaking, if you're not sure which size, it's better just to go with the bigger one, because hot is good. And you know when you're soldering something small to something big, you have to keep the heat on the something big. If I put my torch really much on that jump ring, the jump ring's going to get hotter. The solder's going to want to flow on that. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and it's just like when you're putting a post on or anything like that. You have to concentrate your heat on the big thing. The little one gets hot enough just by being in the neighborhood.
Got it.
Huh? Look at that. Ta-da! I love to solder. It looks, I don't know. I mean, I think it looks good. I'm trying to decide whether we want to add another piece of solder right while it's still here. I think we will just for giggles. I mean, it's filled in.
Actually, want to be careful because of the silver on the brass, right?
Yeah, and I just kind of feel like let's just put one more little piece in there to have a little bit bigger connection. And besides, if I don't take this out of the third arm, it's exactly the right way. Like it's so easy to add another piece right now.
Yeah.
Instead of having to set it up again, and somehow you can never get the fucking third arm like back where it was, and like you know what I mean.
Yes.
So if possible, I always like to, if I'm going to add more, just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Another big advantage of using case flux is that generally it keeps things clean enough that you can just do that. You know, I can just pick this up, I can stick it right there, and we can just go again. That's why, honestly, I very rarely use liquid flux. Only for tiny, tiny, tiny little things, like a little jump ring. There's certain times, but for the most part, I am pro case flux. Just so much more concentrated, you know. Okay. There we go. And I'm not doing anything different than I did last time. Look at that. Nice. Yeah. So throw it in the pickle and, you know, clean it up a little bit, but yeah, that's how good that looks. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks good. And as always, no cleanup is our goal. And if you solder this way, for the most part, you know.
Would you say I should just weed whack it again? After
Yeah, exactly. It won't require any like separate wheels or whatever. Just if you want to give it an overall finish with a weed whacker, that works great.